What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review a 2013 mixtape by Derez. Basically, this mixtape is called Mill Before Dinner Time, and it came out in the spring of 2013. The thing about this particular project is this is a Gangsta Grillz tape. So back in March, I reviewed the debut project by Derez, who was called back in 2011. He was called Debo. He was a protege of Slim Duncan, who Slim Duncan was kind of like a wingman of Waka Flocka and pitches like that. And Waka Flocka was like a weed carrier / wingman of Gucci Mane as far as that particular kind of goes. So further down the totem pole. So basically, further down the totem pole was Derez, which at the time on this particular project he was called D Dash as far as that particular kind of goes. But he was basically on the come up. This is a Gangsta Grillz tape, which is pretty awesome. So he had money around this particular time as far as that pitch went. There's a lot of original production, so he's basically probably a millionaire around this particular time as far as that particular kind of went. Despite the fact that he didn't have any albums out or any true hits in terms of like album quality and charted in terms of like album songs and charting singles as far as that pitch went. So Slim Duncan and Waka Flocka had it made for Derez as far as that pitch goes. But I look after this being able to say this is some good stuff here. Later in the late 2010s, Derez started to chart with songs off of like his Pain and Pain 2 albums. I'm going to eventually get to those, but I wanted to get to some of this just to see how Derez particularly evolved from early 2011 when he was with Slim Duncan. Slim Duncan passed on in late 2011 as far as that particular pitch kind of goes, but Derez continued to put out mixtapes throughout 2012 and 2013 as far as that pitch going. He at least had one other mixtape before this one in 2013. He did some stuff with Dirt Gang in 2012 and 2011. That was originally one of Slim Duncan's groups as far as that particular kind of went, but they kind of dissolved after his death in late 2011. But the pitch behind it was just some good stuff. A lot of good stuff on the mixtape. I fear I'm going to get the Dirt Gang down the road as far as that particular kind of goes. But yeah, this is one of Derez or D Dash's breakout projects. I'd have to say in particular, pretty nice, stylish type one to get a Gangsta Grillz and pitches like this. Some original type stuff that works pretty damn well. So I had to say about this particular project, just the fact about it is I don't know the songs that were released as music videos. There's not a ton of information really about this project. Derez at least does have a wiki page about him. It's pretty dope that he does, just because he did have some charting singles later on in the late 2010s. So it's just kind of the concept. I feel like Wikipedia and other places like Discogs and places like that don't really have like his full-blown discography. It's still kind of random. You have to kind of hunt around and just kind of know your stuff as far as knowing his true discography of all the stuff that he's done. I want to say he was on at least 3 projects in 2011. Like he was on 2 tapes. He did 2 Dirt Gang tapes in 2011, plus the Slim Duncan mixtape Block Illegal, which I reviewed back in March, which is a pretty good pitch. I do recommend that project to definitely check out. It has some of the initial hits. But I would have to say the thing about this particular project is just the fact that Debo sounds a lot different compared to his days of Block Illegal in early 2011 compared to now. It was refreshing. It was surprising just the way he hit the ground running with these 2 years, just in the meantime of just what happened between like his Block Illegal days with Slim Duncan and Waka Flocka these particular more times. Waka Flocka is on this project a little bit. Feels like maybe he helped executive produce this project or at least put the finishing touches on it, but he's barely on this particular project, which is interesting because basically Derez was a protege of Slim Duncan. So it's just kind of the concept. I look after this particular one. It is interesting, all the trendiness that this album has. It's very contemporary pitches like that. I have to say, it just reminds me of stuff that Future and Migos and Yo Gotti and some of those type folks, a lot of popular trap rappers from the 2010s were kind of doing. It's just a very contemporary album to the 2010s. The thing about it is this project came out in the spring of 2013, so this is kind of before like trap had completely blown up and like the widespread kind of Instagram type stuff and pitches like that, but before it became completely dominant with albums like What a Time to Be Alive by Drake and Future and Dirty Sprite 2 by Future and some of those type ones, some of those later albums that were just popular in like the 2010s, Future's Monster, some of those type ones, Migos' Culture, some of those type pitches in particular, some of those far more popular trap albums. But it's just interesting that as far back as early 2013, some of these vibes were particularly kind of happening. So for the most part, 2012 was kind of a different sound. When you think of folks like J. Cole and Big Sean and Wiz Khalifa and some of those type folks, and Drake, Leftover Drake, and Rick Ross, some of those type folks, there was still drill rap that was kind of popular in 2012. Meek Mill was really huge in 2012 as far as the pitch going, but mixtapes were pretty large around this particular time, even though they were starting to dwindle somewhat by early 2013. I'd have to say it was just an interesting concept because this is a free project here, but the particular vibes about this project is just the fact that it sounds pretty trendy to like 2010s trap as far as that goes. If you listen to Instagram type stuff that was on Instagram with like Instagram models, pitches like that, some of those chicas and folks that were kind of balling on Instagram pitches like that, just the concept of a lot of those Instagram stories type songs and pitches like the Quick Times, stuff that was on Twitter and Instagram, some of those type of places. It's pretty interesting kind of get some of that just because this was the sort of stuff, and it's free on top of that. Just being able to say that this is a lot of stuff that sounds like it should be on an album, probably should have been for resale and pitches like that. Was this kind of concept. There's so many hits on here. It may not be a full-blown classic mixtape, but it's definitely a very good one. You can do a lot worse than fucking with this project, I'd have to say, which is an interesting concept. It's just blockaded with plenty of good hits, and the concept of it, he sounds very like I was saying, he sounds very similar to Future. Pitches like that. Some of these trap rappers that were kind of popular around this time, Moneybagg Yo, little, folks like that, Lil Baby before he was kind of blowing up like that. Just some of those type folks. Definitely Migos. He's out of Atlanta, so that's another thing about Derez De'Shon is he's from Atlanta, so it's just kind of the pitches, some of these things. So I guess like Atlanta kind of had this particular sound that like the dominant 2010s trap, just Instagram live type pitches that kind of went along with that. Apparently that had been going as far back. I feel like Future and folks like that kind of helped spearhead this movement back in mid 2011, late 2011, but by early 2013 it sounds completely fleshed out here. It doesn't sound like the train tracks are being laid down. It sounds like this has been something that's been executed and pulled off for several, maybe even a year before this particular kind of happens. It's interesting when you think of like Future's Pluto album, some of those initial type ones that pulled off that particular movement, that it just was fleshed out just to go just within that pitch. This is definitely like an early bird for that particular style, but it's just interesting. So yeah, Derez De'Shon was doing that, and he didn't even have an album out. It's just a good pitch that is how trendy he was. But we'll go ahead and talk about the songs on here. So basically, out of 20 songs on this particular project, I wound up recommending 13 and a half. So that's kind of the pitch about it. So I'll go ahead and talk about these 13 songs I recommend. I'll go ahead and tell you the ones I recommend. So they would be From the Bottom, No Love, Yo Bitch, Throwaway, Get It, Good Girl, Bad Bitch, Bust It, Celebration, Dance for Me, Count It Up, Wall Street, No Charge, and then the Almost song, which is an almost song, is because so that's 12 normal songs I recommend, and then there's 3 songs tacked onto the end, which are freestyles to other instrumentals, like typical old school mixtape freestyles as far as the pitching goes, but one of which I recommend out of those 3, and that would be the Don't Kill My Vibe freestyle, which is the 13th song, and the Almost song is You Love It. So talk about that one real quick. Basically, I'm not going to talk about Kill My Vibe freestyle. I mean, I'll talk about that one a little bit, but just the concept of it is just Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe by Kendrick Lamar, just to say that one. It's a pretty good vibe. Just the pitch behind it is basically if you like Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe by Kendrick Lamar, but you want it in a more 2010s trap-oriented type sense with like the auto-tune hook and pitches like that, just that sing-songiness that Future and Migos kind of do, and folks like that, Moneybagg Yo, some of those type folks, that's basically your song for that sort of pitch. But the fact of the matter is this came out in 2013. It's just interesting. This was not 2017, 2019 when trap was full blown, widespread, just household name type stuff. This is back in like early 2013 when Kendrick's album from 2012 was still pretty fresh, I'd say. So it's an interesting concept. But basically, You Love It's a pretty nice one. This is an almost song, but this is like a snarling kind of trendy nightclub flair of a song, I had to say in particular. It's like a riveting kind of ahead of the times type song, I had to say, but it's just kind of hardcore just within the pitch. I kind of felt like the hook is kind of here and there. I like this song, but the hook was one I just didn't as full blown like. I feel like this is kind of one that's real. This one is pretty trap centric just within the aspect behind it, just depending upon the format for how much you adore like 2010s trap just within that pitch. I mean, it's a good song definitely, but this one has more of a learning curve to just the adaptation of trap music compared to some of these other ones. Some of these have more immediate type factorments, but I feel like that one's just kind of more of like hardcore trap type obsession within that pitch. But then I probably would say that there's a number of songs on this particular project that you have to be pretty depthy in trap music to kind of get with this. It's not really to have like full blown enjoyment. But that was just one I noticed that was more super trap centric. But yeah, I would have to say there's a number of songs on here. These just sound like carbon copies of like Future type stuff and early 2010s trap type feels, which is really late 2010s trap, because a lot of this sort of stuff that was on this particular project was stuff that folks were doing in 2017. This is sort of stuff that Ouija Mac was doing, Moneybagg Yo, Migos, folks like that, Lil Baby, just a bunch of folks like that. Just these trendy type vehicle centric type tunes that are great pull up music and nightclub, strip club type flash. This sort of stuff that Future was just ironing out with Pluto and some of those type albums. I just say it's pretty frenetic. So real nice one for me on here was Dance for Me. Really appreciate this one. It's like a blurry kind of quick speed social outing pizzazz of a song I had to say in particular. It's a great get tore up and having enjoyment type song I had to say in particular, and this works overall. Pretty good pitch. It's definitely a blurry type one. Just reminds me of some of that blurry type stuff that just kind of goes along with it, where you're just living quick pitches like that, but just kind of the concept of just appreciating the times and just moving so quick that just everything feels like a blur, kind of like when Drake says that it was all a blur type tour as far as that particular kind of goes. It's one of those blurry type songs that it's just like, wow, I'm moving so fast, just enjoying the exhilaration and just like nightlife and pitches like that. Just the exhilaration behind it. It's a real nice one. One of the best songs on here would be Wall Street. Wall Street's definitely one of the best songs on here. It's like a vintage 2010s mixtape burner. I'd have to say in particular, real nice one. This reminds me of Waka. This one definitely reminds me of Flocka and Slim Dunk. I'd have to say in particular, this is probably one of the tape's best songs overall. I'd have to say just a real thrilling type one. Definitely takes it back to 2011. Some of those type pitches. Just a 2013 rendition of just 2 years, 3 years prior as far as that pitch kind of went. This is the stuff that Flocka and Dunk, some of those type folks are kind of doing in particular. Just a good concept, real syrupy type beat. Just works pretty well. It's kind of pseudo drill, just like a minor, since it's kind of a pounding type one, but also a little bit of that kind of nightclub dredge, or just the concept of just hypnotic kind of feels of just getting tore up pitches like that. I'd say another drill type song. There's not a ton of drill. I really feel like it felt like Debo or Derez Deshawn. It felt like Debo or Derez Deshawn didn't really do much drill as far as that particular kind of went. But by the time he was starting to blow up more, it felt like drill was starting to get swashed up as far as that particular kind of went. But it's still a pretty good song. Get it? It's like a good mixtape drill remnants of a song. I'd have to say it's like a later hit for that particular subgenre, but it's like a relative rowdy noise. It's just like old Waka Flocka, I'd have to say in particular. So definitely some of the stuff he was doing with like Hard in the Paint, just a little bit more of like a swash version of that, just kind of not necessarily washed up, but just kind of the concept of just a later remnant like pitches like Meek Mill and Rick Ross were kind of doing in 2012 and 2013. It's just too bad that Waka Flocka and Slim Dunk and some of those type folks kind of phased out in like 2011, 2012, because that particular subgenre could have gotten a lot further. But it's this kind of concept. Mixtapes started to die down 2013, 2014. With around the, I mean, you can't really tell that mixtapes are dying down with this particular product. This made it feel like mixtapes are going to be around for like another 3, 4, 5, 6 years, pitches like that. I mean, definitely, at least the fury that they had back in 2011, 2012. Debo definitely has some pretty good fury on this particular project, and he just has a good spirit on this particular album too. It's just a good pitch to kind of get some of this. So it's an excellent concept. Bus is a real nice one. This reminds of 2010's Future and Migos, I would have to say in particular. It's like a trendy kind of radio ready mixtape gem, I'd have to say, and this is definitely some good vehicle noise. So this is a pretty nice one. This one probably could have been a single, I would have had to say in particular. I mean, I feel like Derez Deshawn was still pretty rugged around this particular time, just the concept of how that kind of went. He may not have had a charting single around this time, but he definitely had the fury of just getting some quality songs, just the fact that it's just kind of hardcore rap as far as that pitch kind of went, hardcore trap music pitches like that, but it's just a good one. This has that commercial kind of auto-tune aspect behind it. Just feels like, I feel like some folks, if they were to hear this song Busta, would probably think it was just Future, one of his leftover songs, pitches like that, but it definitely is just trendy to that particular time. This is brand spanking new back in early 2013 as far as that particular went. But I just look at it, it's just a good highlight to kind of get here if you're more user friendly to 2010s trap as far as that kind of goes. But I look after it, some good stuff. Celebration with Gucci Mane on there is a real nice one. So Gucci Mane was like the head honcho of some of these folks, like I was saying before. It's a real nice concept to get him on a song with Debo as far as that particular pitch kind of goes. It's like a woozy kind of night outing flash of a song, I'd have to say. This is a good pairing with Dance For Me. I would definitely feel like this is just a dope Gucci cameo, I'd have to say in particular on this one. So this one, another blurry type one, just kind of get here. A great song to get tore up to, pitches like that. Dance For Me, Celebration, and just some woozy type ones for some night flash. Most of the songs I recommend on this particular project are pretty glitzy type songs. This is just like a full blown kind of night strip club night pitches like that, just going out for the times, popping champagne, some of those type pitches, standing on VIP couches, seeing the women twerk, pitches like that. This has some of those aspects going to go, just real thrilling type time, just to be able to have like some pretty sheer just outings. And for the most part, it just gets pretty crazy. Most of the energy is pretty ferocious on this particular project. I mean, the fact it's not, these songs may not have charted like Future was in 2012 and 2013, but it's definitely a good replacement for some of that if you're just looking for more 2010s trap that's relevant to like early 2010s and it was kind of ahead of that stuff, but just not quite the actual big names that were doing it. So it's a good concept. Good Girl, Bad Bitch is another highlighted one. Appreciate this one. This is another Future and Mike Will made it type cut, I'd have to say in particular. It's like a nice nightclub bop, I would definitely have to say, and it's like a trendy kind of 2010s hit. So a lot of these are just some pretty hypnotic type ones. They're just pretty interchangeable, just the aspect behind it. A lot of these songs I'm just going to have to kind of tear through just because a lot of these, I mean, all the productions are pretty damn good, I'd have to say in particular. There's a lot of glitzy and woozy type ones just kind of get here. Definitely some good pizzazz. If you like Future, if you like some 2010s trap, stuff Yo Gotti was doing, just stuff that sounds circa 2017. It's like I was saying before, it's ahead of its time in terms of the fact that this came out in early 2013. It was probably worked on in 2012 as far as that kind of goes. It's the fact that this is the way that music was kind of sounding in 2018 2018, 2019, and even like the early 2020s, and even now I'd have to say in some particular sense, this is a good concept kind of get that. So that's Good Girl Bad Bitch. Yo Bitch is another one that's like that. It's like a hypnotic kind of strip club hopper, I'd have to say in particular. This one reminds me definitely of Future's Energy, just like Good Girl Bad Bitch and Bust It, some of those type ones, and this just has a nice snarl for some outings. So a lot of these are just going to be pretty pitch as far as that particular kind of goes. I'm starting to kind of lose track of some of the ones I've recommended and stuff. If I haven't talked about No Charge yet, I'm going to talk about it. And if I have talked about it, I'm going to talk about it again. It's a good song here. It's like a creeping kind of ground level spook of a song, I have to say in particular. It's like some good trap music for like autumn, I would definitely have to say. And this is just a feeling Slizzard kind of hit. So this is a definite good one to get tore up to. Feel Slizzard pitches like that. Get some pizza, some of those type vibes. Just be fucked up and just enjoying it. Just the pitch behind it, but just kind of a haunting type appeal. Waka Flocka was pretty good at songs like this as well as far as that particular kind of went. Slim Duncan did some of these haunting type songs. So this is just kind of a more spookish type one to kind of get here, but it works pretty damn well. There definitely should have been more songs like this, I would have to say, but it's a pretty nice one. Trying to think of some other ones. I don't think I talked about Throwaway either. So I'm gonna Throwaway is like an entry kind of evening enjoyment of a song, I'd have to say in particular. It's like a dapper song. I would definitely feel like just some poundage, getting stuff like that. Just the initial kind of fraternizing pitches like that. Just some good songs to kind of kick things off, some of that type of stuff. Feeling Spiffy of a song, I definitely would have to say pretty good Feeling Spiffy tune. This is just like some good pizzazz and just in an overall in a good mood type song I'd have to get. This is a pretty nice one just to have for some pep of just being in that outing type fare. The initial type stuff of getting there, feeling fresh pitches like that, just some of those aspects, just real nice pizzazz just to kind of get with some of that. Just some good, just a lot of good appealing type stuff to kind of get here, I'd have to say. So From the Bottom is another nice one. This is like a revved up kind of nightclub flash of a song, I'd have to say in particular. It's like a trailblazing hit, I would definitely have to say, that's real trendy for 2013. So it's another one that feels surprising that it came out of 2013, back in the early stages of trap as far as that particular kind of went, or at least the early stages of 2010s trap. Definitely a pretty nice one. Is the effect, the execution of these songs is pretty sheer, I'd say. It's just a good concept, just the fact that this is kind of the way that things were in Atlanta and places like that between 2012, late 2011, pitches like that. Some of these folks that were kind of doing some of this stuff was just pretty, and it was just interesting that folks, it's just interesting kind of seeing some of these ahead of the pack type ones just around that particular time. Because when you think back to the stuff that was popular in 2013 as far as that particular kind of went, going from one thing, like when you think of Macklemore being popular in 2013, or you think of Drake being popular with like Started From the Bottom, some of those type pitches, is differential from the stuff that was going on in Atlanta. Gucci Mane was not quite as full-blown trap oriented on back in 2013 as he would be in like 2016 and beyond. I mean, he was kind of doing some of that, but it was kind of amalgamation. He kind of was going to prison. Trap God had some of this type stuff, but not as much as like Future and folks like this. I would have to say it's just an interesting concept. This is kind of some new swirls of stuff. Trying to think of some other folks. Big Sean, Juicy J were not full-blown as much doing this. I mean, they kind of had like some decent kind of ratchet type music, but it's just kind of concept. This was a new oriented type sound that was just kind of refreshing and ahead of the pack. So some good stuff. Trying to think of some other songs I haven't talked about. I don't think I talked about No Love. I'm not sure if I talked about No Love. I think No Love is the last song I haven't talked about, just to say about that in particular. It's like a quick pace, kind of in and out social breeze of a song I'd have to say in particular. It's like some nightclub jazz, I would definitely have to say, and this is also like some cruise out vibes that this particular song kind of gives. So it's just some good concepts, definitely some pull up type music pitches like that, just kind of being in the wind, breezes like that, some of those type pitches, night pizzazz. It's kind of the concept of this kind of is a frenetic type song, just dealing with folks that are kind of giving you problems, especially homies, pitches like that. Is some of the shy type stuff that you would kind of get around that particular aspects of just problems, money problems that you deal with having a lot of money, pitches like that, or just kind of more social type, or just kind of more bustling type times, I'd have to say in particular. Some good concepts just kind of have that one. Just a real nice one to cruise around to, like some of these other ones. Probably say Busted's a pretty nice one for that. Some of those type pitches. There's some other ones probably I'm not thinking of, but just some of those type ones. Dance for Me would be a nice one for that, but some good concepts. So this is definitely a pretty well-rounded project, I'd have to say overall. This is just some excellent type stuff here. Talk about some of the ones I don't recommend. Basically, the other 7 songs I don't recommend on here are the 6.5, I'd have to say. Basically, I felt like the 2 freestyles toward the end, the other 2 freestyles are the 3 that I don't recommend. Basically, I recommend the Don't Kill My Vibe freestyle, but the other 2, All I Need and Money Trees. Basically, I felt like Money Trees is just not a very good song to rap to. It's a good song by Kendrick, but it just doesn't feel like that appealing of one to freestyle to. It's definitely some good summer vibes, but it just didn't mesh with the rest of the aesthetic of this project. And I'd say All I Need freestyle, I don't know where that song came from. Haven't heard of that song, just would have to say in particular, but it was just not that compelling of one to really freestyle to either. It was just kind of the concept in like the vintage mixtape sense, like from the 2000s side, where these freestyles were not quite as compelling. At least felt like "Don't Kill My Vibe" was a nice one, just because he really added some trap oriented type stuff to a song that really didn't have that sort of flavor. But it's just kind of the concept. The rest of these just didn't pull it off as well. Ghost was kind of a dramatic type song that I just didn't appreciate the pitch behind. I mean, I like the concept, but like the lyrics on the particular song was just kind of the concept. It was just overly dramatic. It was kind of like a paranoia type song, and it just didn't really nail the pitch of like what it was trying to do. Maybe the vibes were turned up like 2 or 3 notches more than they needed to. Who Can I Call is just kind of a homely type one. This is one of the few songs that was not oriented towards a nightclub, but just didn't really pull off the vibe quite as well as that particularly needed to. And I would say that Grace was kind of like an intro type song, just a rumbler to kind of kick things off. I liked Waka Flocka being at the beginning of that one, but most of that production on there was just not as compelling as one that probably needed to. It's had a lot of noise and just about it that just was not very synchronized in terms of the pitch of getting something more graceful as far as that particular pitch kind of went with it. So that's kind of the thing. And then Paper was just a poor pop rap type one that just didn't really have much appeal about it. I had in particular. That one was trying to be like more Travis Porter type stuff, but just didn't really pull out the vibes. Just trying to get some commercial vibe that just didn't really work as well, I'd have to say. But that's the concept about this particular project. So me recommending 13.5 songs out of 20 on here. Pretty damn good pitch. Definitely a lot more thrilling type moments on here. Pretty exhilarating and trendy as far as that pitch particularly kind of went. So I'm going to give this mixtape, me recommending 13.5 out of 20. I'm going to give this mixtape like a 7.75 out of 10. I feel like that's still, it would damn near get an 8 if I would have appreciated You Love It a little bit better. That's just kind of the concept. I mean, it's just right on the cusp. I mean, it's definitely an excellent type of stuff here, but there's a lot of songs in here just within the concept that just the aspects behind it, just snatching some of these. I kind of feel like what really dragged down this project was just the extra freestyles on here that just were not quite as thrilling as far as that particular pitch kind of went. If there had just been better freestyles to kind of get to, just songs that would have bolstered this album a little bit better, this mixtape a little bit better, probably would have raised the score a bit. I probably would have said that just if there would have only been the 17 songs, I would have recommended like, if I would have recommended 12.5 songs out of 17, I probably would have said that it probably would have been probably like an 8.25, something like that. Pretty close to like getting like a 9, almost something of that relative territory. I'd say it was just kind of the concept. But basically, those 2 extra songs really dragged down the score a bit, and just some extra kind of moments that I kind of feel like Derez just had the concept of definitely getting these throwing type, outing type moments. It's just kind of the concept that some of these other songwriting type skills were just not quite as polished, I'd say, just within the concept. But it's just kind of, I mean, in some cases you can say Gucci, in some cases you can say Waka Flocka, someone had that problem, but at least, just the turn up moments were the moments that Waka Flocka was known for, just within that pitch. I mean, he did have other moments, but most of the time, folks were, you'd listen to Hard in the Paint, some of those type ones, or like, oh, let's do it, some of those type moments. But it's just kind of the concept. I mean, this is some excellent stuff here. I do definitely appreciate it. It has lots of throwing, just one after the other, just plenty, a dozen good hits off this particular project of just throwing nightlife that was just ahead of the time as far as that went. So the social score is going to get like a 9.25 out of 10. So I feel like it's really that thrilling just within the pitch behind it. Just a lot of good stuff. The only real natch to this particular project is it just didn't have a charting single, something around that time. Not really sure the singles that were, or the music videos that were released around this particular product, I'd have to say. So it's just an interesting concept, kind of get so much of this that was just ahead of the times as far as that went. Just lots of throwing nightlife, plenty of good stuff, interchangeable for Instagram stories, just pitches like that, strip clubs, nightclubs, cruising around, living quick, pitches like that, driving around at night, getting snackage, smoking, pitches like that. Just would have to say some ladies twerk songs, some of those type pitches just to really get here. It's just pretty exhilarating, I have to say. So it's definitely pretty damn near a classic in terms of social score, I'd have to say. But that's the concept about this particular project. Now, in recent times, because mixtape scenes have kind of died down, I'm not really sure what Derez Deshawn's kind of up to. I know he's at least dropped a project as recent as like 2020 or 2021 or something. Not as full-blown sure as to what he's been up to in these times as of from past 2022, but I'd say this is pretty damn good project. I would definitely have to say it's just the concept of just I don't want to say it's overstuffed, but it just had a few Nash type moments, just like some of these mixtape freestyles. But apart from that, this is a pretty sheer type project. You definitely get about 12, 13, 14 good songs that really kick ass and are just pretty much ahead of the pack in terms of like the compellingness that they just did way before their time, I'd have to say. So it's a definite excellent concepts to kind of fuck with here.